Hi, welcome to the Minimum Viable Podcast, the MVP, where we have deeply enlightening conversations with amazing personalities who have created impactful products and companies. I'm your host, Sachin Sharma, here to unravel the secrets of the universe through the minds of my guests. Like and follow, stay connected and learn. Hi, welcome to another episode of the Minimum Viable Podcast. Our guest today has seen it all. He has built a successful startup called Connaizen, which was an intelligent marketing platform used by big brands to build personalized marketing solutions. This startup was acquired by the biggie Paytm, where he now works as a growth manager in charge of bringing in new users to the product. I believe we have a lot to learn from Sanchit, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Hi, Sanchit. How are you doing? Welcome to the Minimal Viable Podcast. It's great to have you here.
Hi Sachin, I'm good, and yeah, it's great to be a part of the something that you're coming forward with.
Sure, Sanchit. So, essentially, for our viewers, could you please introduce yourselves so that we could really have an understanding of what you've been working on?
Sure. So Sachin, I am currently working as a product manager with Paytm, and I'm taking care of all the growth products at Paytm. Prior to this, I was running my startup, which was into B2B data analytics space. We were sort of personalizing the offers for a bank's customers, and that startup Connaizen got acquired by Paytm back in 2018. And since then, I've been working with Paytm in the product role.
That's great. That's great. So essentially, Sanchit, I'm really interested in the whole journey that you took to get into Paytm. But even what I'm more interested in, how did you build your startup to be acquired by Paytm, right? So could you tell me, did you always have the startup bug? I mean, did you always want to build a company?
Yeah, so I tried a couple of entrepreneurial projects back in college as well. So I think in our first year, it was a group of 7 to 8 people, and we started conducting mock AI Triple E tests for the students in Tri City.
Mhm.
So that was what I'll say the first venture that I was a part of.
Okay.
Uh, After that, the idea of Connaizen, as such, we had been working on the idea since our third year of college. Uh, we participated in a competition by the name of ICC Trinity.
Okay.
By the time we were about to graduate, the results of the competition came out. We developed a prototype for ICICI Bank,
Mhm.
and as per the results, we won some seed funding for our prototype. So ICICI was supposed to be our first bank. By Even when the results came out, we were not very sure whether we are going to be incorporating it as a company or just selling off a prototype to the bank. I think 6 months into our first jobs, we decided that okay, we let's just give it a shot at incorporating a company and see how it goes from there.
Okay. Okay. So essentially, it was a very, I mean, gradual process starting up for you.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, so I'll say getting acquired or uh, even scoring investor money was never the first aim when we started. It was just that we felt that the idea that we were working on was a problem that we faced quite a lot, and we were very excited to solve that particular problem as such.
Mhm.
uh, like being college students, we used to find out deals and coupons which were going around in different websites, scroll through thousands of coupons and find out an offer. So we just wanted sort of a personal assistant which can know my choices as a customer,
Mhm.
and whenever there is any good deal out there that might excite me, it gets pushed to me automatically. I
Sure.
don't
Sure.
have to search through them. Yeah.
So, tell me about this first prototype. I mean, did you really use some sort of a methodology to create it, or was it just like a weekend hack? How much time did it take to build this stuff?
So the first prototype that we developed, it was I think developed within 2 to 3 weeks. It was just some manual data entries that we were doing on Excel to
Mhm.
figure out what is the shopping behavior of three or four cards that we analyzed
Sure.
and sort of filtered them down into categories. Uh, but I think once the prototype was developed, and we wanted to scale it on, let's say, 100,000 customers, that was where our first challenge was, that you know modeling for 4 or 5 cards is way easy as compared to generalizing the trends over 100,000 people.
Okay. Okay. So
That's when we really started getting into NLP, AI, and ML algorithms.
okay.
So yeah.
So tell me, how did you, I mean, scale the business later on? I mean, I believe that you told me that it took you 5 to 6 months to basically make the transition from a job to your startup, right? Tell me about your
Yeah.
early days. I mean, how was that like? I mean, as starting up.
So the early days, I'll say, which is very important for any startup as such, is defining the problem that they want to solve. We started developing the prototype just to solve our own personal problems.
Mhm.
Um, but when we, interacted with the mentors at the bank, their heads of digital banking and everything, we realized that on scale as well, this is something that not only the customers want, but all the bigger corporations and all the bigger brands as well want to solve this problem for their customers. So defining a business model out of it was, I think, the hardest part of those initial 5 to 6 months. Whether we can make any money out of it or not, figuring out the commercials around it. And then the second leg of the challenge was again scaling up that solution uh, to the scale of, let's say, ICICI Bank, which is one of the largest private banks of India. So how do you do that? And how do you, because the very core of our objective was that one size does not fit all.
Okay.
So
Okay.
how do you treat, let's say, millions of customers uniquely and solve for them?
Okay, okay, I get that. I get that. So essentially, you had a conversation with a lot of users. Could you tell me something about that in terms of I you just mentioned that you were in talks with bank managers, right, or banking executives. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
so how did that conversation go? Like, I mean, what was the essential questions that you would ask the users?
So I'll say we were fortunate enough to be a part of ICC Trinity as a program, wherein we didn't really have to approach them. It was the other way around, actually. uh, it was just them you know pinpointing the loopholes in our solution and then coming up with the questions about the problems that they were facing in the industry. So
Okay.
that sort of gave us a headway as to where to think, what are the challenges that we should look to solve, rather than going to them with the solution in mind.
Sure, sure. So,
So,
could you give me an example, if you remember
so,
something
so, so
specific?
I'll say one of the examples would be, let's say, ICICI Bank was running an offer with Uber, wherein ICICI was giving 5% discount on every card transaction made on Uber. But what they wanted to do was that to high transaction customers, they were willing to extend somewhere around 10% or even 15% for that matter.
Sure,
For the customers who are only discount hunters, they would want to stick to a minimum discount model.
sure.
So how do you identify which customer is who, was one of the challenges that they wanted us to solve. How do you identify the lifetime value of a customer before he's become a regular customer at your uh, with your bank or with your brand as such. So that was a problem, and it was a common problem when we started talking to multiple banks and multiple merchant partners, as and when we went through it.
Sure, sure. I believe this was the year 2015, if I'm not wrong.
It was 2015, yes.
Sure. How do you think this particular problem has been solved over the years? I mean, it's been 5 years since you've, I mean, built your
Mhm.
startup, right?
Yeah.
Do you think this has been addressed completely?
So yeah, I'll say I still won't say that it has been addressed completely, but I'll say we are somewhere around 50 to 60% of the ideal solution that we should be at. Uh, if we talk about the industry standards as such, every big brand or every big customer facing brand as such has a has a CLM tool, which is customer lifecycle management. So
Okay.
they do segment customers basis either their behavioral patterns, either their geographical patterns, or let's say their transactional patterns. So yes, the brands have started segmenting different types of customers and having sort of segmented offerings for each part of each type of those customers. But I'll still say that we haven't really reached that solution wherein every customer is treated uniquely by every uh, big brand, because that is something which would require a lot of intelligence into the systems which have been built in. Right now, I'll say uh, all these people are just solving these issues using uh, basic CRM softwares, or operationally, I'll say that they are solving it.
Okay. Okay. I wanted to shift to your day-to-day activities as a startup. I do realize it's very different from working at a big corporation, right?
Mhm.
So how did that go? Like, I mean, how was the day-to-day activities like? Did you have like a predefined roles in your startup that this is what your team is going to do, or was it basically whatever was the most important thing to do per day or a month?
So we did have predefined roles. So we had a founding team of 3 people,
Mhm.
and we had like identified certain areas that uh, we were individually looking after. So let's say finance was one area, or investor relations was one area that was being taken care of by Nikhil, who was the CEO. Then there was all our merchant relations, all our bank relations, and all the uh, basically defining the problem that we want to solve, which was more of a product perspective that I was taking care of. And then there was our technology side, which Vikas, who was a CTO, was taking care of.
Sure, sure. Was there some specific product management role, for some a particular person?
So I'll say, because we were in a B2B space, more or so, uh, the product management in B2B is very different from uh, a customer facing company's product management. uh, our customers were essentially just the banks or the merchants. So it was more of a sales come product role, wherein every brand that we would talk to would have a different problem altogether, and we were solving that problem for their millions of customers. So we had to take into account the specific problems that every brand was facing, and extend that in a fashion that it is useful for the generic user, which is the end user, and who in turn have those generic problems wherein they want to be reached out at a certain time of the day or a certain day of the week.
Okay, okay, I
It
do
has to
understand.
be very apt for them,
Mhm, mhm.
but the business objective for every brand would be very different.
Right, right, right. So,
So problem in product per se was twofolds,
okay,
so
okay.
to say.
So, So I did want to understand how was the transition to being acquired by Paytm. I believe that that must have been a stressful or a very different timeline in your startup. I mean, how was that like?
Yeah, so like with every startup, like getting acquired is never the goal.
Mhm,
It's always to be the next unicorn or something. So we were going through certain changes structurally, wherein we wanted to move from a B2B space to a B2C space, wherein we did have certain disagreements within the team as well, and as to what our next headway is going to be.
mhm.
Uh, During the same period, we got approached by Paytm, wherein they had heard of us through some of our partner banks, and they really liked the solution as to what we were pitching to other banks, and they wanted to explore the synergies about uh, so when the initial talks started, it was more about being partners as such, and how could Connaizen and the AI solutions that we provided to the banks can be provided to Paytm. Then we realized that our synergies probably would be better off if we sort of just if the team just worked within Paytm, and on the challenge on and Paytm at that point of time was solving some really unique problems that we really wanted to solve, and Paytm being a customer facing company, it was giving us the headway of having that B2C experience that we wanted to move into anyway.
Okay, okay. So,
So that's how the entire movement made sense.
okay, so essentially, you mentioned that you were a B2B facing solution. So, how did you handle sales in such a scenario? I mean, considering B2B sales is very different from B2C scenario. I mean,
So some of it was through our investor connects. We had a good investor base wherein uh, there were certain renowned names in the banking industry, so that got us a foot in the door. And then probably once we were there in the industry, uh, it was easier to sort of, when you've gone live with one of the major banks, the other banks would want to hear you out as to what you've done with the other one.
okay,
So I think uh, getting going live with the first bank was the major Achilles heel for us, and then like it just followed.
okay, okay. So, could you tell me how did you go live for the first bank? I mean, could you share some very specific details in terms of how did you get your first minimum viable product?
Sure. So again, like because we were the solution that we wanted to develop was personalized offers for banks, and for that we wanted to analyze an anonymized uh, data that the banks have. So the first problem that we faced while going live was again because of the strict privacy laws that all the financial sector has. How do we analyze that data while ensuring that we are not violating any of the privacy laws? So uh, so for that was something that was a major challenge when we started working with ICICI. Then we figured out a model wherein our algorithm we were shipping algorithms to the banks, which were housed within the bank's safety firewall,
Mhm.
and they would only sort of run the ML algos on aggregated data itself. So I would never know that I am analyzing Sachin's data as such.
Mhm.
I would only know that there is a customer ABC who might have a preference to go to Domino's, and after getting out from Domino's, he might want to take an Uber.
Sure.
So that sort of predictive algorithm basis the anonymized data is something that we started working on, and then it became a standard solution that we could use throughout the industry.
Okay, I understand. I understand. So, I realized that you had a very small team during your whole life cycle of your company. How was that like? I
Yeah.
mean, I believe that you were under 10 people. Is that right?
Yeah. So we were around 7 to 8 people. Uh, when we got acquired, I think at our peak we would have been around 12.
Sure,
So because we were majorly a tech company and our clients were always big banks and all the nationalized retailers only, we didn't really need a huge sales team or a huge operations team, and we were uh, so most of the employees that we had, in fact all of the employees that we had uh, were for the tech team only. So
sure.
they were shipping solutions that then the founding team was going out and deploying at different uh, pitching to different banks and different national retailers. And that is where I think the product part of it really comes into play, wherein you are able to maintain a lean team
Hmm.
and rely more on technologies so that one solution can be scaled across different retailers. So I think at a peak we were partnering with 100 national retailers
Hmm.
and 6 or 7 national banks with just a team of 10 people.
That's great. That's great. So, so how long was the sales cycle like? I do believe these big companies take a long time to say a yes. Uh,
Yeah.
so, would it take? Yeah.
So with the banks, definitely it was a very frustrating and a painfully long sales cycle. It would range anywhere between 3 to 4 months to probably a year from our first meeting to going live with that bank.
Okay.
But I think for the national retailers who were pitching their offers from our using our portals, for them it was quite like we had a DIY platform wherein every retailer could just sign up and start using our program.
Okay. Okay. So,
So for them, it wasn't such a big hassle.
was there some difference in what you gave to the banks versus what you gave to the retailers? I mean, is there was there some difference in the offerings, or was it a common product that you built for both of them?
So the product was built like two ways, wherein one side of the entire ecosystem was the bank who was providing us with this data and who was sort of reaching out to the customers with the communications.
Hmm.
And the second part of the ecosystem was these retailers who were uh, pooling in with the offers.
Sure. Sure.
So let's say Uber would come in and say that if you have 30,000 target customers for me, I'll give them a 10% discount
Sure.
with so and so bank.
Okay. Okay. So, getting back to the acquisition by Paytm, so I believe the cultural differences in your startup and a big company like Paytm must have been something to be adjusted to. Is that a right assessment?
So, so yeah, definitely when you're running your own company and when you are in a, let's say, 3,000 to 6,000 odd member organization, it definitely takes some getting used to. But the good part was that Paytm till date also has that hustle attached to it. So it was never like moving from a startup world to a slow moving organization as such. It was always about moving from a 10 member lean team to a 6,000 member huge team. But I think the speed of how we were shipping products is still more or less the same.
Mhm. So essentially, could you tell me something about what you're working at Paytm right now?
So again, at Paytm, I am working around the growth products only, which again involve personalized offers for or segmented offers for all the different customers. How do we pitch these offers across different touch points to the customers? which life cycle of the customer should uh, should we give a certain offer to, where to uh, reach out to the customer, when to reach out to the customer,
Sure.
all of those different.
So from what I understand, it's a very similar kind of role from your founding years. And
Yeah.
has a bigger team like Paytm's technology team helped scale your product in some way? I mean, was there some inputs from the internal team that really changed your technology?
So one thing that I'll clarify here is we are not working on the same product as such.
Hmm.
We are working on an in-house product at Paytm only,
Sure.
which Paytm had already developed. So I am sort of like, it was more of an acqui hire wherein the team now is now working within Paytm.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, and I'll say definitely uh, the expertise that you have from an earlier role helps into the newer role, but because it's a completely different product altogether, it's a completely different ecosystem altogether, because here we are reaching out directly to the customers. We have to be more wary of the fact as to what communication goes out to the customer, how do we, where do we pitch to the customer, and which section of the app looks like what. So I think it's more of a, the UX part of product management skills comes more into play over here in a B2C company as compared to in a B2B company.
Okay. Okay. I understand. How's your day to day like at Paytm? I mean, I believe that you use some sort of a product management methodology. I mean, or you must be using Scrum or Lean, Agile.
So yeah, like most of the product teams within Paytm work on an agile methodology, and in terms of day to day, what how we go about is uh, a product manager's let's say day is like 50% of it goes in defining the business objectives or the business problems that we want to solve in uh, you know in accordance with the senior leadership's goals and objectives and the business teams. Then I'll say another 30 to 40% of your day goes along with the tech teams, and uh, defining those solutions along with the tech team as to how can we productize the objective that we want to achieve.
Sure, sure.
And the rest of it is mostly documentation and getting your syncing up with all the different stakeholders.
Okay, okay. So, a very tangential question. I mean, we do hear about the 10x programmer. Is that a myth?
The 10x programmer, I won't say is a myth, but because I'm not a programmer myself, I don't think I am a good enough person to comment on it.
Okay, okay. So, what I mean by that is sometimes coders can be a hard bunch to manage. I mean, is there some particular issue that comes up
Again,
managing coders?
I, I don't think a product manager ever has to personally manage a coder. At least in Paytm, how we are structured right
Uh-huh.
now is a product manager is separate and an engineering manager is separate.
Sure,
So engineering manager would have more of a technology know-how and architectural system know-how, and all the coders or the entire tech team would report to that engineering manager.
okay, okay. So, and you,
So a product
okay,
manager really doesn't have to worry about managing a particular coder as such.
sure. So,
Uh, we are more focused on how, what is the problem that we are solving, what are the different user flows that we have to look after
So
and all of that.
you communicate to the engineering manager about what you've decided, and how does the consensus occur? I mean, how do you really decide that this is what we're working on?
So again, as I told you, we have to work very closely with the senior leadership about what are the, let's say, next quarter goals that we are going to achieve,
Mhm.
and what are the business problems that we really want to solve, whether we want to focus more on retention of users or acquisition of users in the next quarter. Accordingly, we would come up with some product solutions as to what we can do to enhance the experience better, or give a better offering to our customers, for that matter. And then the tech team comes into play, wherein a product manager would take a PRD to the engineering manager saying that this is the flow that we picture, this is the objective that we want to solve, and how do you think it can fit in the current architecture, and or in case we need to build something new from the scratch, then how do we do that.
Sure, sure. I understand. Moving back to your college years, so essentially, like we discussed before this podcast, it's we didn't really know product management existed, right? So, and there has been a great upheaval in terms of the kind of roles being offered in product management. So, why do you think product management is critical these days?
I think uh, for one particular reason it is very critical is we've seen a lot of good products out there which haven't I won't call them good products in the first place, but let's say they are very scalable products as
Mhm.
such, but they haven't really focused much on the user experience, as to uh, if let's say there is a loader going on the screen, how do you capture the user there, uh, how do you build his interest into what's coming in next.
Mhm.
So that's a very small anecdote as to what a product manager should take care of. uh, what are the different how do you make your app or your product very user friendly, is something that the product manager has to is the biggest KRA of a product manager.
Okay, okay. So,
So you can be a terrific technology solution and still be terrible in terms of UX. I think that is the gap that a product manager is able to fill.
sure. So, how do you go about filling such gaps? Say, for example, you do have a great technology product. So, is there what kind of things do you measure to make sure your UX is doing great?
So the first, like the thumb rule is use your product over and over again. See what are the troubles that you are facing yourself as a user. Talk to different people about uh, you know how they interact with your products. Just observe them
Mhm.
while they interact with it. Like some people might have difficulty in finding a cross icon, or how do they go back, or which screen comes in next.
Sure.
If you have coded those particular screens yourself, you probably might know, but a new user might not be able to browse through your entire app so easily or so intuitively.
Mhm. Sure, sure.
So all of those flows as to how the interaction and the entire experience is effortless for the user.
Okay, okay. S- Right, right. I understand.
And then, like, we do have certain tracking mechanisms wherein we create Google Analytics funnels as to what is the drop off from a particular rate, and then you can get into the technicalities of each and every one of those things.
Right, right. So going back to your college days, I see that you've been involved with a lot of great clubs in at Punjab Engineering College, right? So I just want to tell my viewers he was a president of Daniels, which was a great club in college. He's also a member of Speakers Association and a member of the management committee at PECFest, which is one of the largest fest in North India, right? So, have these experiences helped you in any way? I mean, in retrospect,
Yeah, definitely. Your interpersonal skills get better and better as you with more of an exposure that you have, and I think that exposure really helps in the corporate life as such,
right, right,
uh, wherein if you are well read or you are well versed with what's going out i- in the society, you are able to probably express yourself better.
right, right. Mhm.
And I'll say like all those or any job profile which requires a higher magnitude of soft skills, it really helps.
Right. So, say for example, I just got into college and I really want to get into product management. What would you do differently for 18 years old?
I think I'll take a lot of courses on Coursera or something, and probably understand the entire software development lifecycle better.
Sure.
I'll say like until my first job, I had no idea what agile is,
Mhm.
uh, or probably what goes on when you have to write more than, let's say, a C++ code which says hello world. How are apps made?
Sure. So, so essentially, you would tell someone to create a product of his own and test it out.
Definitely, yeah,
Right, right.
yeah, yeah. I think like do as many betas as you can
Mhm. So,
back in public.
so essentially, I also wanted to ask you about what kind of skills should someone focus on. I do understand communication is something that a manager really needs. Does he really need to understand the code?
Uh, it's not really important because you will never be coding as such,
Mhm.
but it's a good to have if you can understand the architecture, if you know what an API is,
Right,
if you know why an API is used.
right, right. Okay.
So, yeah.
So,
As long as you know the basics, I think you're good to go. You don't really need to optimize your code as such.
right, right. So, what are you reading these days? I mean, there must be some particular information that really helps you with your job. Is it something that we as future product managers should follow?
So I think Medium is really good in terms of picking up, what are the best practices being followed in the product management field. You can just follow some of those tags, and there are a lot of good articles and a lot of good publishers posting on Medium about their experiments, their learnings, and so that's my go-to source for reading.
Okay, Medium, right? Do you write on Medium? I see that you've written some articles on LinkedIn where you discuss the payment landscape in India. I mean,
Yes.
how did you research about that article? It was very insightful.
So it was mostly interviews that we conducted at that point of time with different industry leaders,
Mhm.
and then some information was again pulled out from different circulars of RBI and NPCI, and what are the mandates which are being given to the banks and the entire payment industry as such.
So, so essentially, I wanted to ask you what makes you excited about the future. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening in technology. There's the decentralized internet. There's cryptocurrencies. There's AI. Right? What
Yes.
excites you about the future?
I think blockchain is definitely one field where I would want to have some sort of experience in, and something that I haven't really personally explored as much as I would have wanted to. But the kind of solutions and the kind of decentralized solutions that are coming through blockchain are probably very exciting and can shape the next 30 or 20 years from now.
Yeah, okay. So, why is that though? I mean, what do you like about the blockchain world?
Sorry, Sachin, I can't
I'm saying,
get you.
no worries. So, I will repeat that question. I'm saying, what do you like about the blockchain world? Is there something specific?
I think the the core proposition of blockchain being decentralized is something which is very uh, exciting, and it being distributed as such. For that matter, even if you talk about cryptocurrencies, or in terms of how different legal solutions are being uh, explored through blockchain. So it one file is distributed across multiple systems and multiple servers across uh, different anonymized systems. So that's something which can really help with file management. Probably going forward, uh, our storage devices might become redundant, and that's something which can not only just shape software but also the hardware of the future.
Right, you're right. Uh, so you've also been involved with AI, right? So do you think AI as such as it exists is overrated? I mean, considering we were promised flying cars by now. In terms of, do you think the
So,
proposition of AI is a bit overrated?
so I won't say AI is overrated, but it is definitely overused. A lot of times when people are just doing basic math in their program, they would term it as AI.
Mhm.
So, uh, but definitely the scope of AI in its true essence is enormous as to how a machine can, you know, teach itself and evolve its patterns.
Right.
That is something that a lot of good programs have also been written on it, and there's a lot of exciting research going on it. It can definitely shape the way we interact with technology, you know 5 to 10 years from now. But it is definitely an overused term wherein everybody says that we've been working on AI
Mhm.
and we're doing this and that with AI.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
So, so Sanchit, that would be it from my side. Really nice to have you on the podcast. Where can our viewers find you online?
I think LinkedIn would be the best way to connect. That's where I'm the most active. Yeah.
So, Sanchit, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate the knowledge that you've shared. And I hope to have you again on the podcast, considering we could really delve into some specifics.
Sure, Sachin. It
Thank you
was
so
really
much,
great talking to
Sanchit.
you.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.